Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Armchair Traveler Series talk put on by the Haynes Public Library. In this series, we have our friends and neighbors from the area come and give presentations about travels far and near, travels and adventures far and near. Some of them require lots of physical challenges, some are mental challenges, some are social challenges where people have gone to places that are new and different, and they meet all sorts of different kinds of people and see different kind of places. So it's about learning about our world. My name is Cindy Buxton. I'm a volunteer who helps organize this. Matt Gilson is the deputy director of the library. He also helps put these talks on. So thanks to the library for hosting these and making it happen. So tonight our talk is by Jess Orster. It's called Long COVID Recovery Traverse, Flower Mountain to Gustavus. Many of you know Jess. She is a consultant who she owns her own consulting business. She works in community development and an analyst and facilitator. She's also is a wife and a mother and a great community member. And she's lived here for 20 some odd years and does some pretty damn amazing adventures.
You're here.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. So here is Jess. You can use this. If you can't hear without the microphone, please just raise your hand. Tilt it. Okay.
Do you want me to do the screen share? Share. And then where's the slideshow? Okay.
Okay. Good morning. Or no. Oh gosh. Here we are. Okay. What do you want me to do? I have to see all those
Oh yeah,
people. We can just hear it go like this.
There it is.
That's so good. Team effort is the dream effort. Can I shut off our video? Yeah,
All good.
we're
I
on.
think you just hit the space bar to advance.
Okay. Hi, everybody. No, I don't think I've ever seen people inside on such a nice day. So, thank you for being here. And I'm going to tell you guys a story. I love storytelling. I cannot say that I am a very accomplished storyteller, but I will try my hardest here. I'm going to tell you a story about long COVID recovery. And in that today is going to be a three-part story that culminates in a wilderness traverse. I know most of you are here to hear about a wilderness traverse. That's not going to be the full story. So this was a 60-mile by ice, 40-mile by sea traverse. And that's pretty much the extent of the trip beta I will provide in this presentation. Really, when Cindy asked me to do this, I was like, oh, I don't know. There's so many amazing stories out there from this community. This community has so much depth. Are you muted?
What's up?
Are you okay? Nothing. This community has so much depth that it felt in wilderness adventures that it feels quite humbling to stand up here and provide a story of one that I did. But I felt most compelled to share the story of this one because this is a journey that from disease and back to myself that happened through the mountains. Okay, so now I just push spacebar, you say. That didn't work. Let me try a different button.
Ready?
That didn't work. I'm a Mac user. This is going to take a minute. Which button?
There you go.
Try the enter. Does that
Enter.
work?
You pushed enter.
I pushed enter.
Okay, we're gonna get this, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so this is a three-part story. The first part is the long COVID, which was 18 months, but the part that I'm going to focus on was from March to July, right before this trip happened. The second part of the story is trip planning, and the third part is the actual traverse. And I felt that for you to really grasp this traverse, you had to understand where I came from and what I went through and why this traverse was planned like it was, because it wasn't to go into the wilderness, it was to heal myself. Okay,
So here you go. In March of 2020, I came down with COVID. I got really sick. The first 14 days were pretty mellow. I mean, not that mellow. I couldn't breathe. It was hard to walk. It was the worst thing I ever felt. I was like, oh my, this is crazy. And then at day 17, I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt like I was dying. And then my entire world tanked. My autonomic nervous system went completely fried. I believe that what I would have had if they could have diagnosed me at that time was what you see up here. I had tachycardia for 5 months. I couldn't write, I couldn't read. I had extreme fatigue. If I tried to go from one room to the next, I would get severely dizzy and go kind of blind. I would lose all my vision. One morning I woke up and I was like, looked like I was 8 pounds heavier. And Kev looked at me and was like, oh my gosh, what happened to you? And this was like a day by day thing. We would look at me and be like, what's going on with Jess today? And then a week later, I woke up and I was back to my normal self. So it was quite a ride. These things here that I've listed are kind of what happened along that ride that brought me back to my place. And I have to tell you, before this, I would have never spoken this language. I'm an analyst. I'm very left brain oriented, and I did not, talking about like physics and quantum mechanics and helping spirits and miracles was not my language. Kev has explained this as like, I mean, I like the new Jess, but what happened to the one I married? Okay. So I would say, looking back now, and now that this traverse happened in 2021, so I've had many years to kind of think on this, and I'm going to call this divine interventions. And in that year and a half, when I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was going to live or if I was going to die, there was these divine interventions. And one of them was, for the first time in my life, I couldn't walk, I couldn't move, I couldn't be physical, which required me to lay and think and ponder and not use all of my coping mechanisms that I have learned over the years, 38 years, 39 years of living. Another divine intervention was that my family and my ancestors instilled in me at a very young age that there is something bigger and greater than you in this universe, and you should lean on it. And I would go down to the ocean with my son, who was 3 at the time, and he would play in the sand, and I would feel very ill, and I would pray to whatever was out there bigger than me that I was going to get out of this. And then a crazy event happened in my life. This bunny rabbit. In December of 2020, I had reached a point where I did not want to be alive anymore. I was not suicidal, but I did not want to live if I had to live how I felt. And I was laying in bed because that's where I spent a lot of time. And I was thinking about my aunt who lived for a long time with cancer. And I remember many moments of her life, of her thriving. And I remembered saying to myself, okay, Jess, there are people out there who have lived with illnesses and disabilities, and you can do this too. You just have to change how you think about this. And I had this divine intervention into my brain, and it was like, you need an energy shift. So many of you in the audience and maybe online know Megan Hart. Megan Hart does Reiki. And at that point, I've never been to an energy healer before. And I was like, I just need an energy shift. I'm so focused on dying and focused on all the doors that have closed in my life that I need to shift the way I think and start looking at something else. And so I need help moving my energy. And I called up Megan and I was like, Megan, can you give me a Reiki treatment? She's like, sure. I was like, I don't know what that is, but do something. She's like, okay, come to my office. And it was blowing snow. And I walk up there. And I, at that point, hated going into rooms because I didn't want to get more sick. and I didn't want to get COVID again. And it was a big hawk for me to go into somebody's room. And I got up there, and Megan's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but Teddy couldn't get the table in here because of the snowstorm." And I was like, "Oh, just my luck. Like, this is my life right now." And she's like, "How about you sit down?" And we sit on the floor. And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't need this." And so I sit down on the floor. And I know that Megan won't mind me telling this story. I hope, Megan, wherever you are. Um, and all of a sudden, Megan kind of drops into a meditative trance state and she starts asking me these questions. And I'm like, what is going on? And before I know it, I recognize that Megan is asking me questions about someone in my life. And that person ended up being my grandmother that had passed when I was 8. And she kept asking me these questions, and I was like, "No, who's this?" And she's like, "We're on a farm, okay?" And then I'm like, "Grandma Bunny," and she's doodling on this piece of paper, and she whips the paper around, and there's a bunny rabbit drawn on the piece of paper. And I'm like, "Okay, wait. I didn't know we were going to channel a dead person, and I did not know we were going to talk to my dead grandma." But I was like, "Hey, you know what? I got long COVID. Anything goes at this point in life." And so she starts talking to me, and I start talking to my grandmother. And we have this long conversation, and we had talk about illness, and we talk about Kev, and we talk about anxiety, and we talk about her death, and we talk about all sorts of things. And I'm like, I leave there and I'm like, talk about an energy shift. I was like, what just happened? And there was a few tights prior to that in that year that I woke up and I thought that I was dying because I couldn't breathe. I was like, and I woke up, my heart was going. And so I was still having really traumatic nightmares where I would wake up from those nightmares and I would be like, just frantic. And in this exchange with my grandmother said to me, "I know that you're waking up with nightmares. You have to know that when that happens to you, I am there with you." And then she said to me, "I know you love going out into the hills, and you need to know that I do too. And when you're hiking those mountains and you feel that wind is me." So that night I went home and I went to bed. I was totally spun. I came back. I was like, "Kev, I think I just talked to my dead grandma. I don't know what I'm going on. I know that everything in life is crazy." We're like, deep breath. Okay, here we are. And I go to bed and I have a nightmare. And I wake up and I'm like in my panic, anxious space of not being able to breathe. And I felt the presence of my grandmother so profoundly that I instantly went back to bed and felt completely calm. And it was these divine interventions during this year that really kept me in line on a trajectory of knowing that I was going to get out of whatever I was in. Meeting my grandmother across the veil was the energy shift that I needed. Another incredibly most divine intervention that I was not expecting during this year was that the earth, I learned through reading and through direct experience, that the earth is the most healing capacity that we have to heal our nervous systems. The only time I felt well was when I went and I slept on the ground. And I would drag myself out weekend after weekend with my husband and my kid, and they would take me camping. And I'd wake up in the morning and I felt like I could breathe. I felt that my heart was okay. And I learned through direct experience that there was something going on out there with the planet and with me biologically, and it was supporting my healing. And then after I met my dead grandmother, and the next divine intervention came through when Juniper Talley texted me and said, "I left you a birthday present down in your bike garage or bike shed." And I walked down there, this was February, and I opened up my bike shed and it's this book. And I'm like, okay. I Googled Joe Dispenza. I'm like, whoa, okay, who's this guy? And then I go to try to listen to one of his meditations, and I'm like, whoa, can't do that. That's the trippiest thing I've ever heard, and it's really distracting. And I was like, no. And then I went back and I read the book. And because I'm an analyst, I need things presented to me in a logic brain type of way. And he presented the physics, he presented the quantum mechanics, he presented the information to me in a way that I was like, oh, this is what you are getting at. And he said, you can heal yourself by changing the way that you think. And you can heal yourself by listening to this meditation and doing these thought processes. And at that point, I was like, why not? The doctors that I had talked to, the one doctor who helped me the most was Dr. Wendell, and he was from here. And he told me, there's nothing that we can do. You need to go home and you need to meditate. Medical world right now cannot help with what you have because we don't know what we're working with. And there again rang true. You need to go home and meditate. And Joe Dispenza was like, here is a meditation that you can listen to, and here's a book to help you understand what I'm trying to get at. And really quickly, what that book means, or what the concept is that everything's energy. And when you put a thought and you mix that thought with an emotion and you hold that for 17 seconds or more, you are sending out an electromagnetic field into the universe. And as soon as you send out that electromagnetic field, it attracts whatever is vibrating at that same vibration back to you. And so all of my thoughts and feelings up into that moment were, I'm really sick. I'm never going to get better. I'm going to die. I can't do this. I don't want to live. I started listening to this meditation, and here's the thing. You don't say, I want to be healthy. You say, I am healthy. And then you sit there and you hold that feeling. And that is when the magic starts to happen, is that once you have a thought and you put that with an emotion and you hold that, and the emotion is important because the emotion is connected to your heart, and your heart is 100 to 5,000 times stronger in sending out electromagnetic waves. Okay. So if you combine it with a magnetic wave from your heart, you will start attracting. So that's what I did. I did that for February, March, April, and by May, I was like feeling way better. I was like, oh, wow, okay. But I still couldn't breathe. Every time I breathed, I felt like I was breathing through a screen. That didn't go away until well after this traverse. And I was sitting there and I started dreaming of a trip. And it was like, I kept having these intuitive hits during this whole time because I couldn't listen to the doctors because they didn't have anything to say. So I was like, I just have to listen to my intuition. And I was like, I need to get out there and I need to have a nervous system reset. I need the wilderness to reset my frequency, my nervous system, because I knew it worked with the days camping. I knew I couldn't have whitewater and I couldn't have vertical climbing because I could not exacerbate my nervous system. I knew that the terrain had to be flat. Good luck around here. I knew it couldn't be longer than 12 days because I don't think I had the capacity to do it because I hadn't done anything in 14 months. I knew I couldn't go fast and I couldn't go for long days. I had to sleep. This was all very different than any wilderness trip I had ever gone on before. I was following my intuition, and the intuitive hits were that it all had to be an all-female team because this was about empowering myself back to living. And nothing against all men on my teams. I love them. But when a male is out there and they're capable, I take a step back. And this was not about taking steps back. It had to be local because the healing capacity of this valley is profound. And I wanted to tap into that. And I had to honor and build these relations with these energies that had come into my life in this time of great sickness. I knew it was going to be a mind game. I knew that I had to remember the quantum field and that there was infinite possibilities out there. I had to control my thoughts. And I knew that I needed a lot of courage because that's what keeps fear from anchoring into your heart. So I sat there at my desk feeling angst about having to be at a desk and still not well. And I looked at the maps and I found a route. And then I had to find the team. And the team was divine intervention in itself. Because Jen Walsh, who isn't here tonight, and I wish she could have been because she would have some great ideas to contribute to this thing. She's kind of my go-to adventure partner. But she had just given birth 7 months prior. And I was like, okay, the only person I know that could do this is Walsh because there was a lot of glacier travel. So we needed someone who knew ropes. I needed a doctor. I wanted someone who I had deep trust with, who was very strong, who could carry themselves because there was no way I could carry anything for them emotionally, physically, spiritually. So I text Walsh. I'm like, Walsh, you want to go on an adventure in a month? And she's like, yeah. Then she texts me back. She's like, where? And I sent her the map. She's like, I can't do that. I have a 7-month-old. How am I going to get the time off? I'm like, oh, thank gosh, I'm off the hook. I have no one to go with me. 4 hours later, she texts me back. She's like, I'm in. I got a babysitter. I got time off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Jen Walsh.
Fine.
Divine intervention, Jen Walsh. So then we were like, who do we ask? I was like, I don't know who we asked, but this is what we need. And Jen had seen me the year and a half leading up to this, and she knew that we were dealing with a different me and that we needed someone equally as capable, equally as confident, and someone that wasn't going to be able to carry their own load. And if something were to happen with me, was going to help carry me emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And so she's like, what about Abby Holmes? And I'm like, I don't really know Abby, but I trusted. I had a deep, deep trust for Jen, and she vouched for Abby. So Jen was the wilderness doctor and timekeeper. Abby was the morale coach, and I was the patient. Okay, part 2. Good thing we got over long COVID. That was an ugly scene. Now we can move on. Part 2 was the trip planning. So the big thing about us is like we were like 30, 40, 43. We were like, we cannot carry heavy packs. And since I said there could be no men, I was really regretting that statement because I was like, who's going to carry my heavy bag? And so we made this incredible Excel sheet, thanks to Jen Walsh. And we started purchasing really cheap, lightweight gear. And we boiled it down to the lightest packs that we possibly could. We also needed to brush up on some serious glacier travel. This is a great book of illustrations for anybody who wants to learn glacier travel. And I leaned on my friend Mosky because I was like, if there's anybody else out there that I want Jeff Mosky, but he's a guy, so he can't come either. Maybe he can make us some maps. And so he made us these incredible maps. And then we like pretended we were doing crevasse rescue in a really nice sunny house. And we practiced, but I didn't put on a shoe because I wanted to make it like, a little bit hard just in case it actually happened out there. But we were a bit like, we had 3 weeks and Abby showed up like 4 days prior and it was game time. Kev's like, I'm glad you picked 10 days trip, but this is turning into a like month-long thing. Rel and Kev made me a backpack. And I hiked to the top of the race trail because I was like, okay, there's nothing steeper than this on this hike. If I can get to the top of the race trail, I can do this. And that was my nervous system regulation. I was resourcing information. Little did I know it was going to be harder than the race trail. Okay, that was trip planning. Part 2 is over. Part 3, the traverse. Okay, so then we went. Okay, so here we are. The start of this trip started in a helicopter. Okay. That's not usually my mode of operations, but it's different. The thing is, here's the thing. I couldn't go up steep terrain. So I needed to get to the top of the mountain to start this traverse. And then it would be flat. And so I think called up Darcy Colbeck and we figured out how to get a helicopter to take us to the top of Flower Mountain. And I love that in this picture is beautifully me and my teammates, okay? I'm usually, I would like to say, a little bit calm, cool, and collected in an emergency. However, if it is not an emergency and there are nerves in the room, I am the one that are visually expressing it and showing it. These guys are also nervous. You can tell by their faces, but I'm the only one that's really like embracing this. Never would I thought that a healing journey and a spiritual journey could start in a helicopter, but it did, and it was full glory. Okay. So this is Flower Mountain, Boundary Glacier. We asked the helicopter, a big part of this traverse was our most like the part that we had any bait on was this. part of the glacier. And we knew that down near the bottom, it got a bit cracked out because it was steeper and it curved. And when that happens on a glacier, then you get more cracks. And it was July. And so we asked the helicopter to go and fly over the Boundary Glacier before he dropped us off. And we flew it and we were looked at each other like this. And we were like, okay, I guess that's a go. Everything from the air looks way different. And then they dropped us off. My husband, okay, mind you, dropped me off on this glacier with these two women. And you can see how fun it is because look at her hair. I don't know if this will work. And we got all our stuff on and we were pumped.
Hand signal, dance the signals. Dance. Yeah, snack dance. Pump dance. Put it all together. Snack, pump dance.
What we didn't realize, but we found out pretty quick, was that all three of us needed to laugh. And that's not going to go. I don't know how to get to this together. Okay. And I felt so blessed about a few things in my life. One of them is that I found myself to Kev, and Kev, I don't know if you can get this in your life, but it is a pretty magical blessing that when you find someone in your life who believes in you before you believe in yourself. And the other magical thing I have in my life is humor, passed on to me by my father. And I try to surround myself with people who are funny and just love to joke around because there is nothing better. And that's what a bunch of this trip was, and minus a few moments when it didn't feel so funny. And so that was them looking pretty good. Didn't they look good? We looked good. We knew what we were doing. And we started off very good. Look, and I love Walsh because anything to do with ropes, have been on the sharp end, which means the lead end of a rope. And Walsh was like, we were all standing there nervously, like, oh no, here we go on this glacier, and there's no boys to pull us out of the crevasse if that's to happen. And Walsh is like, I'll lead. And we're like, yes. So she ties herself in and away we go. And if anybody was out there with us that day, they might have been like,
Just to me.
okay, guys, we're in mountain boots without ski boots. Like our feet are not securely tied, like they're strapped into skis. So that was really not easy, actually. And we laughed really hard. Oh, did I lose it? Okay. But the views were spectacular. And we got down to the end of the boundary, and probing, everybody works well. Good job. Check off that skill set because we did find some really serious cracks with a little bit of snow, and we probed and we're like, ooh, don't step there. And we wove our way down to the bottom of the Boundary Glacier. And as I said, a big part of this was connecting with the energy and connecting with the divine and connecting with the earth, because that was what had saved me for the year prior. And so I made it an intention, and I told these women that I'm going to do ceremonies out there and we're going to do them every day. And I hope that's okay with you, but I need to do this for myself. And since this trip is largely about me, that's what's going to happen. And so I just want to take a moment to tell you about these ceremonies. A dear friend of mine who has passed away, John Waterhouse, who's an Indigenous man. I worked for him for the Yukon Intertribal Watershed Council years ago up in Whitehorse, and I was their canoe guide for their healing journeys. And every morning before we would head out, he would gather the group up in a circle, and he would have a sage or tobacco, and he would have the shell, and he would call in. He would call in the river. He would call in the sun. He would call in the wind. He would call in our ancestors. He would call in our own spirits. And we would stand in that circle and we would have a conversation. We would ask the river to be calm. We would ask the winds to be at our back. We would ask the weather to do as we wanted. And I was blown away because trips with John Waterhouse were magic. And I miss that man. And this is one of the greatest gifts he ever gave me was the wilderness ceremony. And so we got to the bottom of the Boundary Glacier and we're like, snack dance. And then we're going to do our ceremony. And Abby, who I didn't know very well, jumped up like this was like the best idea she's ever had. And I was like, we're going to be just fine. And we had our first ceremony and we called in the glacier spirit. And we called in the sun and we called in the winds and we had a conversation with all the elements out there that could potentially work with us. Because once you go into the quantum, as we know, there's infinite possibilities and you can attract those possibilities to you. And then we kept walking. And I want to say that it was just full glory. And it was, but it also wasn't because it was hard for me to breathe. These women moved, but they didn't move too fast. They waited for me. I would have to control my breathing a lot out there. I did not want to get my heart rate to a point where I couldn't bring it back down. We found beautiful campsites. There was no wind. We didn't need to find shelter. We would wake up the next morning. We would have our glacier spirit come in. We would have our ceremony and we would begin our day and it'd be like, yahoo! Abby, before we started, she was like, am I going to be cold out there? And I was like, I don't know. Like sometimes it can feel like 70 out on the glacier. And that is exactly what it felt like. As you can see, our faces are like white because we had so much sunblock caked on. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful besides the cups. See, if we didn't ask for it, but if we got really greedy, would have been like, could the cups in the glacier be smaller so our skis glided better? But we didn't go there. We found beautiful lakes. They were also a bit sketchy because I think at one point Abby's like, I'm going to jump in. And then she like moved on a rock and was like, whoa, this rock isn't attached to any other parts of this. And then we're like, whoa, we're on a glacier. We should rope back up. This is a picture that is a moment for myself because along the way of this journey, feathers have come to me. And feathers are for indigenous people and in the Bible, they are like a kind of a sign from the creator or divine that you're protected. And throughout this trip, whenever I needed something, I would see a feather. I know some of you guys are like, no, that's just what happens. But this is the middle of a glacier, the middle of nowhere. Tell me why that is out there, and I will maybe believe you and not me. And the campsites just kept being glorious. And the snack breaks were awesome. And what I think Jen and Abby were most so stoked about was that like the navigation up to this point was real easy. It was like follow the arc. We'd go to bed, we would wake up, we would do our ceremony, and Jen Walsh, mighty Jen Walsh, everybody should remember, and we should have a moment for this, was pumping, okay? She had an infant at home, and she was not going to lose her ability to feed that infant, and she was actually keeping her milk supply.
She was keeping it, like she was traveling.
Abby and I were drinking it. No, I'm just. That was awesome. No, we were not keeping the milk. No one was drinking, but that would have been the way. We would have been like, whoa. No. Okay. We were pumped. We were living the dream. And then when we needed to, when the wind would slightly pick up and it would sound like this, we found a pile of rock to put our tent behind. And it was cold but it was still glorious. And this is as we are starting to descend down off of our glorious glacier trip. So the next morning after we woke up here was the morning that we were going to descend to the terminus of this glacier. So for many of you probably know what that means. For those of you don't, the terminus is like the snout or the tail, like the part of the glacier that meets the land or the water. And I had been on a few glacier trips with Kev, and I'd also, like many of you, flown over glaciers and looked at these terminuses and been like, oh, that's the last place on planet Earth I want to be, because it does not look easy. And as an empath and a highly sensitive person, the energies in the wilderness, I feel them. And when there's a lot of energy, it speaks to me. And at the terminus of glaciers, there's a lot of energy. So here we are. This video kind of tells you the story of that.
Okay, Jess. Overall everything. How you doing? Give it to us.
Tell us what day it is.
19th.
What else you got?
It's pretty glory. We've eaten a lot of cake on this trip. The boundary ate some cake when we scored that one. The apex of the Carol Circuit ate some more cake. Hiked down yesterday, cake eaten. It was just that we honed in the glacier spirit that she has provided. Now where am I at? Well, we got a little bit of the terminus of the Carol, and the terminus of glaciers make me feel.
Okay, so that was, whoop, I'm gonna mess this all up probably. Sorry guys, I wish I knew how to not do that. So the terminus of a glacier, that was the beginning of heading down there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started down and then we made, I think, is this the fern line? Is that what this is called? Where this, look at that. So where the snow of the glacier ends and the ice begins. And we put up our skis, and I would like everybody to know at this point we were like, do we dump these skis in a glacier crack? But we didn't. We are leave no trace, plus heli riders, plus carry your stuff out. Okay, so we put our skis on our pack, even though it was way tempting, and I won't name any names, to dump them in the crack. Why wouldn't it go? Let's go back down here. Okay. And it was beautiful. We started to hit the moraines, where you can see Walsh sitting there taking a snack break where the big dirt rock crunch piles of ice, and big holes in the glacier. And you just got to kind of start picking your way over the moraines, back onto the ice, over the moraine, back on the ice, around this kind of convoluted, way. And as I was the women that I was with were like, all right, Jess, you're our navigator. And I was like, okay, I can handle that. I can navigate. And they're like, don't put that on me. And so when I was coming down off this glacier, I was like, oh man, taking in my situational awareness. And I was like, wait, this is not what I had planned. Now, we had flown this route and I had thought when looking from the air that Glacier Right, the river was not coming out of Glacier Right. The river from the air looked like it was all coming out of Glacier Left, a huge river. And this glacier is about 2, maybe 3 miles wide. And I thought that we could come down Glacier Right and we could hop on these moraines. And there wouldn't be a river. And then we would just out to Glacier Bay. Well, guess what? We didn't do a ceremony that morning. We just talked about eating cake. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Oh, no. Got a little bit cocky, and the earth was like, oh, yeah. So we come down, and I was like, oh, man, this is gnarly and not what I want to see. Right up here, my cursor, these are huge, like 70, 100-foot fins of just glacier ice. They look like dirt from the air, but they're not, and they're thinned out. So you couldn't even climb up it, but if you did climb up it, then it's just a crevasse, like this deep cut on the other side. And this is what I saw, and I was like, oh no. And I didn't say anything at first, because you never say anything. I learned this from Kev. Don't talk about how bad it's getting till you just have to talk about it. So we didn't talk about it yet. And we get down to the bottom and we get into this pit, and I'm like, man, it's like we're walking into a canyon. And it's exactly what happened. We walked down the base of this, and it was a canyon. You see these walls? We walked all the way out. We dropped our packs. We walked all the way out here. These were like 300 feet high, and there's a river that's just snaking through this, a raging brown river. and there was no way out. And so, oh boy. And so we were not stoked.
Here we are. We're in a pretty intense moment, our trip. We're just here at the base of the Carroll. We made it to the base of the Carroll. Yeah. And it is a junk show down here. It's like all shapes and sizes. It seemed to be pretty clipped in by what we thought were moraines, but are really just thinned ice.
Probably can't hear that, can you? Okay, so it's just saying
So yeah,
we're just cliffed in. And this is intense. And Abby said it's a junk show.
this is hard.
Junk show. AKA, I don't even know another way to say that. Junk show. Okay, so what did we do? We set up camp. That was all we could do. It was later in the day. It was getting to evening, and we had no way out, and we had no plan because our plan of where we were going to go wasn't going to go. And so we set up camp, and the one beautiful thing, the universe was like, even though you stopped doing ceremonies and started talking about eating cake, I'm still going to give you a nice campsite. So that was really nice. We hunkered down. We were out of water. It was windy, as you could hear in that video, but we were out of the winds. And that was probably one of the longer nights of my life. Besides the nights where I felt like I was dying from COVID, this night I was like, evac, someone come pick me up. And we started plotting ideas. We were like, okay, well, can we go back? And we couldn't go back because there was a big storm coming in and we didn't have the food. We needed the food, which was on the coast, which we were going to get to in 2 days. And then we were like, well, why don't we just call it like it's been a really nice trip? Have someone come pick us up. And then it was like, oh, you're in Glacier Bay National Park. No one can land in Glacier Bay National Park. We all look at each other like, what? Not cool. And at that point, I was really not pumped because I was like, man, like I wanted a flat trip. And I got a flat trip, but what that meant was no one had reconned it. And I was cursing. I was like, I should have gone uphill. At least I would have had a recon trip. We didn't know what to do. And so Wallace, who's incredible at falling asleep and resting in the moment, goes to bed. She wakes up probably 4 hours later. She's like, why are you guys awake? And we were like, well, we don't have a plan. And I was flipping through my pictures. We talked to Kev on the InReach. And the pictures that I'd taken from up top looked like you could go way glacier left and you could go potentially get out glacier left, potentially, but there was a huge river. And so with Kev's text messaging, the ever optimistic human that does drive me nuts, but is also helpful, is like, I would try it. It's your option. It's your best option. And it's going to be sunny tomorrow. I'll get in there and I'll fly it. And if you can do it, we'll drop you what you need. So that was that. And that was about 3 a.m. And we went and we slept for a few minutes and we woke up super early because we had a huge day ahead of us. Because what that meant was that we had to climb out of this canyon that we had put ourselves in, go way up glacier and climb over this gigantic moraine, which was in the middle of this glacier to get to the other side. In all hopes that it would work.
Beth?
This is the next morning.
Oh man, I feel like I need to just. Guess this is what you get when you go into the unknown. Kev always says that it's not an adventure until you like get off the trail and get off the map. Well, here we are. Yeehaw adventures.
We were pretty, why do some work and some don't? We were pretty, pick your partners out there. Because Jen and Abby could have been like freaking out at me at this point. Like, you picked this route, you was supposed to be flat, it was supposed to be cake, and it is not. And now we're backtracking. And Walsh is like, every day that this trip goes extra is another $1,000 in daycare. And I was like, oh gosh. But none of that happened. And we walked back up. And we started to walk to the other side of the glacier. And then we heard an airplane. Can you see the airplane in this picture? Okay. This also, which I forgot until the box dropped down and there was a love note from Kev. Yay, love notes. Was like, happy anniversary. This is my anniversary. And I was like, the whole time I was like, why can't that airplane just land? Why can't it land and I can get on it? Like, I have no, like, this isn't for my ego. I just wanted to heal from COVID and I'm not healing. Well, no, the airplane can't land on these parts of glaciers because there's big crevasses. And so that wasn't an option. But I sure did wish I did a ceremony for that. Okay. And then boxes started dropping out of the
That one just
sky.
narrowly missed a crack.
And we were really lucky because they didn't fall in any of the cracks. So the boxes that fell from the sky. So Kev dropped 2 boxes. One was a box with a boat. And the other one I started to rip open and I was like, wait, there's a map. Kev had drawn a map. Okay. Wow, if that doesn't give you like a lot of like, yeah, let's go get it attitude. Here's the map. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. But he sees a way and he dropped us a boat. And so this must be where the way is. And he didn't pick us up. So we don't have any other option. And so I had to have a moment of burning a fire because burning fires just get me all fired up. That was like the most alive I felt on the whole trip. You can see Abby and Jen in the back be like, now we're out here with a complete lunatic. What have we done? And we started making our way. So I like the first attempt to come down was to come down this far part of the glacier on Glacier Right. And that took us into a canyon. So we came up the glacier, up over that moraine where we could, back down here where Kev dropped the stuff, and then we started hiking. I think we backtracked probably another 2 miles back up. 2-3 miles. This moraine down by the canyon was like super steep. You couldn't get up and over it. So we had to just go up until that thing settled out so that we could get over it. At that point, I was like, I need to get these guys like and myself out of here. And so I was scouting and trying to find our way. What we didn't have, I bet you now with like, I bet you could walk with a Starlink on your backpack now and get downloaded pictures from the air, but we didn't have this. But what Kev had seen was this picture. And so he saw these spots in here and in here. And he was like, if I drop them a boat, they could get across and then they could get overland. Now, that's what he saw. Also, you see this? This is a huge dome where the entire river goes under here. Okay. So that's my husband. Yeah, go for it. This is what we saw. Okay, so we got down there and we were like, that's obviously the easiest way to cross. And we started walking out on this, and the whole sand just started shaking. It was like walking on jello. And we were like, back off, back off, back off. You're just going to sink. And there was a clear viz of that dome. And it was clear that the whole river was going under it. And it was clear that we were going to go up and over that. And that's when we started praying again. That dome was thick. And so we had a big debate. Do we keep going, or not debate, but conversation? Do we keep going or do we stay? And do we do this? Do we take the night? So we had a long day. Obviously, we got up early, backtracked, got here. We decided to take the night. We knew that in the morning, and when it was cold, there would be less water at all these crossings. And so we played it, and I needed to sleep. We woke up the next morning, and here I am and Abby, and it's cloudy. The clouds had come in. And by the way, we had not, I just keep noting, we hadn't had a group ceremony yet. This was our river crossing, and I felt super badly. When these boxes fell out of the sky, could not take another ounce of weight. My heart, like my body, I couldn't take it. And so these ladies probably put like 8 pounds of extra weight in their packs, each 5 to 8 pounds. And it slowed them down. And they were troopers about it. And I don't know how they got over this terrain. This terrain was, look, this terrain is just scree rock on glacier, on snow, ice, rock. And then this is what Kev saw from the air. So we made the crossing, we walked over the dome, it was all right. And this is what he saw. And this is what we had also seen. We knew that this was coming. But from the air, you're like, oh, sweet, nice. Okay. Once you get in here, these are like 300 feet high. And it's ice. It's ice with a layer of rock. And if you go the wrong way, you're either backtracking or you're not, you're finning out on these crazy steep, really unfortunate fins of ice. This is what we saw from the ground that day. So with Abby and Jen with the really heavy packs left me like kind of running out ahead this whole time scouting. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to mess this up because we don't have a lot of spare gas in our tanks. And if you go the wrong way, you're going to be in a whole lot of hurt. And it was like you couldn't get a viz. Well, it was cloudy. It was glacier fog on top of you, but also like it was one hump after the other. And these are the maps that Mosky had made me, and they're superimposed topo maps. And I followed a line. I followed the line on the map, and I just followed these flowers. These pink flowers kept popping up. Every time I looked down with doubt, a pink flower would pop up. And we kept going, and there was no water. So here I drank this water and got Giardia. Pretty sure that was from that one. And look at that, guys. We made it. We didn't quit.
Fucking life that I do right now. You.
We were pumped. And then we got down, we didn't even make it to the ocean. We were like, holy, let's rest here. And of course, Jen had to pump because she's still trying to make sure her baby's okay. And we're resting, and it was glory. And then we walk the rest of the way, and we get to the ocean, and note this river because this river comes up in the next story. And at this point, the plan was get rid of all the mountain gear, switch over, have a boat come in and drop us these kayaks. But when we talked to the boat guys in Glacier Bay, they're like, no one comes out that place. Like, there's no reason to go there. We've never even taken a boat in there. We don't know if we can get there. So it was actually really good that Kev had dropped us a boat because the boat came in handy. Because the drivers in the boat didn't think they could get our kayaks to us. And so they were like, you need to come like a mile out. So the plan was we were going to load this boat up and it could take 2 people and all our gear. And one of us was going to stay. And I don't know why I said I'd stay, but I stayed. And this is where we were. And so back it up though, when we were coming down from here, okay, so we packed our stuff up and you come around this corner and we cross this river down here by now closer to the ocean. And we're coming down and all of a sudden this bear comes off the hill. And we're like, hey bear, hey bear. And the bear turns and runs back up the hill. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm like, I bet you we're going to where that bear wants dinner. And so, but of course we were on, like, this was like 4 a.m. We had to wake up early to make this tide, to make this boat thing. So this was early and we were like super razor focused. And Jen and Abby leave. And I'm left on the beach with the tide coming in quite fast, with a backpack with all Jen and Abby's stuff, all our group gear that was left, and this garbage bag that was equally as heavy. And I could only carry one of these at the time. And so I was like, look down. I was like, oh man, the tide's coming up so fast. And all I had on my feet were Crocs. And you can see all these muscles. And I pick up this backpack and I walk around this rock through here. And there's the bear. And I was like, I had like all the moments of flashing of like, no, like this can't be. I'm pinned in by a mountain and a river and I can't go back because the tide's coming. And I had a moment of terror. And then there was this divine intervention. And these words as clear as babe was like, you're not going to die. This bear's not going to attack you. And for some odd reason, like I had been this whole time, I believed the divine interventions. I believed these voices, these intuitive hits. And I was like, if you can talk to the spirits and to the earth energies, you can talk to these animals. And I started talking to the bear, and I was like, all right, bear, I know you want to go where I am because you need to get to all those muscles. And I need to go where you are because I need to cross the river. I couldn't cross the river where I was because it was too deep and wide. I needed to go up where we had crossed before, but it was going towards the bear. And so I did it in stages. I brought one pack and I dropped it off at those rocks, and the bear stood there. And I ran back as the tide was coming in, and I grabbed this garbage bag and ran back, and the bear was standing there. And then I started humming and singing to the bear. And I started singing, okay, bear, I'm going to walk towards you, bear. But it's only so you can get to your food, bear. I have to cross this river, bear. And what I had to do was I had to walk towards the bear. And the bear gets up on its hind feet. And I was still like, I guess maybe adrenaline's real. And this is where I realized adrenaline's real. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not dead yet. Okay, bear, stay there, bear. I'm moving, bear. Like I was just talking to this bear about what I was doing. And I think the bear was so confused because it was like, why is this thing going back and forth, back and forth? And like, why does it have flip-flops on in Glacier Bay National Park? And so then I get to the,
Person isn't worth eating.
yeah, this person is not worth eating. I get to the, yeah, exactly. I get to the edge of the river. And I'm like, there's me, there's the bear's on its back feet. And I'm like, I have one shot at this river crossing. And I was like, I can't do it twice. And so I need to like muster up whatever strength from whatever ancestors I've got. And I need to pull it all in right now. And I need to take both of these bags across this river. And so I was like, because this bear, I just was like, this bear has given me enough grace. It's not going to give me grace forever. And I need to get out of its way so it can go eat breakfast. And so I picked up the backpack, I put it on my back, I picked up the garbage bag, and I start into the river. And the river's going pretty, like, it's not like, I mean, yeah, it's going, it's a river. Anyways, it's a river. And it's probably up to like right below my knee. And so I'm kind of taking it like not slow, but not fast and not wanting to fall on my face because that would be the end of our group gear. And my shoe fell off. And I'm standing in the middle of the river and my croc floats down the river and I'm standing there. And all of a sudden I just start laughing because I think of my mom. And I hear my mom and she's like, what are you doing in the middle of Glacier Bay National Park all by yourself with only one shoe? And I just had this moment of like, oh, watching my shoe and oh, there's the bear. And like, what am I doing? What am I doing? So I cross the river and I get to the other side. And I could only go for like probably 20, like maybe 15, 20 more feet. And I just had no more strength in me. And I put down the gear and I sit down and the bear comes off its hind feet, gets on its paws and just walks down to this spot and starts digging for breakfast. So then I'm sitting there across the river, which really is not far from this bear. And I'm like, I wonder how much time I have. And I wonder how much time it's going to take Abby to show and Jen to show back up. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking and calculating in my head, okay, maybe half hour before this thing gets interested again. And I hadn't seen a boat because it was too foggy. You couldn't see anything. And then I heard the boat and I was like, oh, no way. The boat was coming towards us. Like I thought Jen and Abby were going to have to kayak to me because this boat couldn't make it because the tide would be too low. But the boat could make it. And from as I was told in the boat, is they were headed towards where they left me. And they saw the bear, the big bear pawing. And I think there was a moment in that boat where there was a moment where they were like, Jess is dead. And this guy, I think his name's James, but I might be wrong. Oh, I hope I'm right, but I might be wrong. He's like, he's scanning the beach and he's like, no, there she is. And he saw me. And then everybody, I'm sure in the boat was very happy that I was not dead. And so then they come and they pick me up and I get on this boat And I'm like, can this be over? And of course, Jen Welsh and Abby are like, no, this isn't over. And this guy is like, you ladies are nuts. And you need to take a breather. And so he decides, and we think it's a good idea, that instead of like dropping us right back off with everything, he's like, I'm going to motor you 10 miles to this place and you guys are going to do whatever you need to do. So he takes us 10 miles and he drops us off. Okay. So we get off the boat, we get all our gear. We are gone from glacier mode to boat mode. And this video cracks me up.
The first high tide of tomorrow. What time?
So tomorrow's Friday.
The 22nd.
23rd.
Okay. I can't figure it out.
We were so tired.
Why does it say 0?
We shouldn't have been allowed to come out here. We can't figure out the tide. 0. That's like midnight.
Midnight.
We were so tired. We couldn't figure out and it wasn't just tiredness, it was switching from one sport to the next, right? It's like, wait, crevasses, da da da. And then it was like, wait, tides? And we very much underestimated Glacier Bay National Park. We were like, we didn't even think about Glacier Bay National Park. We were like, we just got to get off this glacier, go through the glacier. Well, we underestimated Glacier Bay National Park. Thank gosh that guy took 10 miles off our trip. And this is not the greatest picture of us, but this was the most beautiful camp night. The whales, because I don't know if you remember in long COVID, they shut down Glacier Bay National Park and there was no boats. And the whale spouts were going off like fireworks all over this park. And then it was a high tide night. And so we slept on this tiny little island and we got up into the beach grass so we knew where the tide wouldn't come up. And all night they just circled and hummed around our island. It was absolutely incredible. The next morning we woke up and we were stoked. We were so happy, again, underestimating Glacier Bay National Park. And we were like, we don't worry, we weren't day drinking. We weren't morning drinking. Those we just had for that night. But we were having our oatmeal and we were very happy. And these are the only pictures we have of Glacier Bay National Park. And the other cool thing about this place, I had only been there once before and it was a shortened trip, but we got to see the sea otters. Probably many of you have been there before, but just the rafts of sea otters eating on their backs, eating those little mussel clams. It was magic. So we make our way and the plan was, this is the last kind of story to this trip. The plan was to make it through the Beardsleys. Is that right? That's how you say those islands? Okay. And we get our last water like before here and we get to here and we're like, oh, well, there's no water. And we get here like probably around 4 o'clock at night, like right here. And there is the densest fog I've ever been in, or not ever been in, but a dense fog settles in. Before I moved to Deschutes, I was a canoe guide and I took kids on 45-day canoe trips circumnavigating Edelin Island down by Wrangell. And so I felt very comfortable in the ocean on ocean vessels, without a motor. But I don't like paddling in dense fogs. I don't like route finding in dense fogs. But Abby and Walsh were like gung ho. They were like, we're almost home. We can smell the barn. And I was like, I'm still alive. And I can't move. And that's how I felt. And that's kind of the team dynamics. And so they're like, I think we should keep going. And I was like, I don't know. But the issue was the water. We didn't have enough water to like be out here for a couple days and we didn't know where else we could get water in here. And so we started in the dense fog around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night, and we start paddling and we paddle up and the tide was just high enough that it was over this. But we kept couldn't figure it out and we couldn't see. And finally I just pulled the plug. And usually I don't pull the plugs, but I was committed to myself to follow my intuition. And my intuition was saying, don't do this. Don't go around the Beardsleys in a dense fog trying to get in at night at like midnight. Don't do it. And so it was hard, but I was like, you guys, I'm not in it. I don't have it. And we pulled back. And we get back to this campsite, and now we're unpacking, and it's probably like 11 o'clock at night. And spirits are pretty low at this point. We get into the tent, and I'm crying. I'm done with this trip. I am exhausted. It was harder than I had thought. And Walsh and Abby are like, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need to feel safe to move tomorrow? And I'm like, I actually can't think. I don't have the mental power right now to get us out of this or to figure this out or to do any of the like the figuring. And so I need you guys, because it's going to be dense fog probably tomorrow morning, to put into your GPSs the points through the Beardsleys that we could go so we could follow our points. And then I told Walsh, because Walsh during trip planning was like, I talked to Nacho and Nacho taught me the rule of 12s. You guys heard of the rule of 12s? Oh yeah, yeah. You're like, of course. I was like, Walsh, you got to do some math. Walsh knows math. I don't know math. Walsh, do some math. Do the rule of 12 and figure out how we make it through this, so that we hit this tide so perfectly that we don't need to portage. They do their stuff. They put all their points in. She figures out the rule of 12. She's like, we got to wake up at 5 a.m. So we wake up, and this was a previous thing, but this is how dense that fog was. It was so dense you couldn't see anything. And then what did we do? Walsh goes, we wake up. I'm exhausted. We're all pretty down. She's like, you know what? We haven't done a ceremony. And Abby was into my ceremonies. Yeah, you got this. Walsh was like totally into it, but wasn't leading them. Walsh jumps up, grabs the sage, and does this incredible ceremony that I was just standing there like, whoa, she should be the ceremony leader. And does this beautiful ceremony. She calls in the breeze to blow out the fog. She calls in our like inner spirits to give us the strength to continue on. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I look down and there's a feather. And I'm like, we're going to make it out of this. And we start paddling. And as we paddle, we hit this part of where we thought we'd have to portage. And as we're starting to portage, or we didn't have to portage because she nailed it. And all of a sudden, the fog lifts, burns off completely. And this is what I didn't realize, but you have to hit this, right? This part of the Beardsleys, like you come through here. Wait, where am I? This is what am I trying to say? Barley Cove. Okay. I have never been in here, but you gotta like move this and you have to hit this tide or you don't make it through this. And we're paddling and the tide and the sun's out and Abby and I are like da 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 da. No one's looking at their GPS, and Walsh is like, we're going the wrong way. And then Abby and I are like, no way, we're going the wrong way. And she's like, well, you made me put all these points on my GPS last night. We're definitely going the wrong way. And we had missed, like, this place is so disorienting in there. And she's like, don't go that way. So we came back out and we just made it through this. We made it through. And there we am, unpacked, and there we are on the beach we made it. And you'd think that we would be like dancing, but I was back to laying down. And we got picked up by Megan and here, and they took us back to the AMG house and they treated us like queens. And the next day we woke up and we got picked up to go home. And it felt pretty incredible coming home to my kid. And that's all I got. My last slide is about your vibrational frequency. So I've done some since I've read a lot about energy and I read a lot about vibration and resonance. And here's what I've learned. Take it or leave it. But I still got the mic. So I'm going to tell you. So you might think that like joy or love or gratitude resonates you the highest, right? okay, that gets, and they have devices now that show this. This isn't just me being Yahoo, okay? They can plug you up to a device and they can show your electromagnetic frequency, and then you can be down here and like shame or fear, kind of where I lived for a year, and then they can show your vibrational frequency. And then you can start having thoughts and feelings of gratitude. Gratitude is the best way to raise your vibrational frequency. And then you can have feelings of love and joy. Joy is like a banger of a vibrational frequency, not happiness, joy. There's a difference. But what they have found is that the highest vibrational frequency is your authentic self. And I have no idea how you find your authentic self. That's up to you. But I do have to say that if you can find it, and if you can turn on your intuition will tell you that. And it's not going to be you being the smartest or the strongest or the fastest or the most beautiful. It's going to be you being your authentic self, and listen to your intuition because it will find you there. That's all I got. Oh, that's my dad. Oh, Dad, you're not very technologically inclined, are you?
So people can ask questions, and then I think Matt can read ones that come via Zoom, or people in Zoom can unmute themselves and ask as well.
Yeah, Jessica, if you don't mind just repeating the questions back for the Zoom people. You don't need to, you're good. You don't
What am I
need
You
supposed
don't
to do?
need to do anything.
Is there any way I can get my dad's face off the TV? No, I'm just kidding, Dad. I'm just kidding, Dad. Okay. It's late on the East Coast. Okay, cool. Okay. So we can either do questions or we can try to drop into the quantum and attract some possibilities. Just kidding. I won't force you all to do that. Okay. Okay, great. No questions. Let's go. Oh,
I don't have a question, but I just know something.
aw,
Happy. Well done.
thank you. Thank you guys for being here and listening.
I want to echo Darcy's comment is that actually you are a fine storyteller.
Aw, Feather.
I'm Bill. I wonder if you do workshops on how you find these alternate realms of quote unquote reality.
I would do a workshop. Just get in touch with me. I had this trip, and I can't say that from after the trip life was rosy. Actually, I still couldn't breathe after the trip. I didn't really start getting rid of long COVID until about 4 or 5 months after that. And then because I kind of opened up this intuitive place, I started to realize that there was some significant spaces in my life that were not in alignment. And so actually life got trickier. And for the past few years, I've spent a lot of time researching. I'm an analyst. So researching and studying and taking classes. And I am not a teacher of this, but I am a facilitator, and I would be more than happy to facilitate the information to you. Wait, what in the way back?
So at the beginning of your speech, you were practicing it and you said you took off your shoe. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the mercury, you lost your shoe. Like, was there any thoughts how it was manifested? Or?
Oh my gosh! That you just like connected two dots. See how serious this is, you guys? This is serious business. Quantum mechanics. Oh, the comment was that in the one during trip planning, I practiced the crevasse rescue with only one shoe on. And then in the river, I lost my shoe. And so in some way I had manifested this and drawn it into me. There's really, I'm not a physicist, I'm not a quantum mechanics expert, okay, but it has been shown, and now through many experiments, and it blew Einstein away, I guess, that everything's an energy wave, right? And that everybody thought that reality was fixed. And then what they started showing was that if you bring in something to observe those waves, that they act differently. And that kind of took everybody on a whole different route. And now what they're showing, like Joe Dispenza has this incredible documentary out. It's called The Source. He hooked up a whole meditation room with brainwave gizmos and gadgets. And he showed that by doing this formula that is ancient wisdom, it's really like Qigong and mixed, but with this thought plus emotion that you change, they were changing their blood work was changing through this week process. So I don't know, take it or leave it, but it's kind of amazing.
You know, just, I don't know you that well, even though I've been in this town for almost 20, for over 20 years, but I, I loved how you married your health challenges with nature. I found that so inspiring to me, because I used to hike with the Haines hiking group and all this stuff, and I've been just holed up in my apartment for years with health problems. And I just so appreciate what you've done here.
Oh.
It's really a gift, and just thanks so much.
Oh,
And I
thank
hope
you.
to be part of this.
Okay,
this
well,
thing.
contact me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that even now, I can't be physical. I'm not physical like I used to be. And my approach to going into nature is very different now. Like usually it was like, I'm going to go hike from here to there. I'm going to climb this to that. I'm going to ski this. Now it's like, I'm going to go lay on the ground and I'm going to go absorb the earth's frequencies, or I'm going to go on this walk and instead of thinking about the 100 million things I have to think about, my intention is actually going to be to connect. And I don't know, it's it's not just indigenous knowing, it's now being coupled with scientific proof that the earth heals us. And we live in like the most incredible healing space. And I feel so blessed that I came with that sickness here. Yeah. Yeah.
Just, do you see, there was a lot of suffering, both in part one, physical suffering and emotional suffering, and I can't live like this. I don't want to live anymore. And then you proceeded and did the traverse, and there was a lot of suffering there too, of all kinds. Do you think the joy and the healing came as a result of so much suffering? Is there any connection between that in your experience?
That's a great question. I believe that, like a lot of people ask me, how do you meditate? How do you do that? I can't do that. And I say, that was like the greatest gift from the suffering. That was the greatest gift that COVID gave me, was that, and was that it like And so I don't know, like, I don't really know that I would be like, I am back stronger than I could ever imagine. Maybe not physically, but in such a sense of spirit and mind. And I don't think that I would have gotten here without all that suffering. Now, do I believe that you can get here without all that suffering? Yes, but I don't think they teach us what we need to know. And we need to be taught a different way of knowing. Um, I also think that the suffering, like when you're at that kind of level of despair, it's way easier to have moments of gratitude when you start coming out of it. And the little things mean so much more. So, like, I don't need to have an incredible wilderness traverse anymore. Like, I need to like go for a walk with my family, or I need to like getting to be with my friends and breathing is like, so I think in that way, suffering does is a roadmap, like brings you to more joy in some ways. If you
Like
if you let it.
motivation.
Well, it's a stark contrast.
There's an old blues song that goes, been down so long, it looks like up to me. And if you've been down long enough, you can see that something that would have killed you before looks like up to me.
Yeah.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives you something you can find joy in.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's 7 o'clock now. The library's supposed to be closed. So why don't we thank Jeff and Jeff? Share that kind of story with strangers and open up.